Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Today, we're going to be looking at a potential uptick in tropical activity over parts of the Pacific, especially the eastern Pacific, going through really near the equator. That's really where we're looking at an uptick in tropical activity throughout the next few days and the next couple of weeks here. Now, it has been a very quiet period over the past couple of days. Really, nothing too big to talk about. No severe weather, really. There's zero tropical storms in the Atlantic or the Pacific. And there really isn't anything too big to talk about. So I took a 4 day, 5 day break from making videos. So just took a little bit of a break just because there wasn't really anything to talk about. And now I'm back. I'm probably going to not upload tomorrow because this is really the only big thing that's going on. And then most likely we'll have an update the day after or maybe even the day after that. So just because it is a very, very quiet period and there really isn't too much to talk about, if there were something to talk about, I would definitely be posting videos more regularly than I am currently. So we are going to be talking about this tropical activity that's going to start happening over parts of the just north of the equator, over just west of Central America, and that's where we're actually going to be seeing the most tropical activity over the next couple of weeks. So we're going to have this line of thunderstorms that is going to move basically from just south of Hawaii to about Central America, and that's just going to continue training over that same area, and that could potentially lead to some tropical storms start to develop, maybe one or two, which would be your B storm and your C storm in the Eastern Pacific here. So here's your current National Weather Service page. Really nothing else except for these red flag warnings over the Rockies and also the Central Plains. That's actually because you had a big ridge of high pressure start to move over parts of the central United States. That brought with it some very, very warm conditions. You got into the 90s over parts of the Dakotas through Nebraska, Kansas, and as far south as Texas, where you got into the hundreds. And combine that with some very, very strong winds, and that definitely can increase the chance for some fire danger. So here's something I really wanted to show you guys because it was very, very interesting when I looked at the satellite this morning. You can actually see some of the Saharan dust move off from the coast of Africa here, so you can kind of see your Saharan dust, kind of that kind of brownish shade right there. That's all that dust moving off of the deserts in Africa, in northern Africa, and that's actually making its way westward with the winds because in this part of the world, the winds actually go from east to west. So that Saharan dust is actually getting pulled further to the west, and that will actually decrease your tropical activity for the Atlantic, or at least anywhere that the Saharan dust is really affecting, and that's portions north of Venezuela and north of Brazil, and spanning all the way to northern Africa. So a good swath of the Atlantic is pretty much shut down for tropical activity over the next couple days because of the Saharan dust. So really, the only area that's really looking decent for some tropical activity in the Atlantic is just south of about the Cuba and the Dominican Republic there to about Central America, and that's where you actually have potentially some thunderstorms move through, maybe one or two chances, very slight chances of seeing some tropical storms develop. But that's just something I really noticed, and it looks very, very cool on the satellite imagery, and something you don't see too often. So here is your Eastern Pacific outlook from the National Hurricane Center, and they say no new tropical cyclones are expected during the next 5 days. And this is going to be something that happens really between the 6 and 8 day time frame, and even beyond that. So it is going to be a little bit farther out. And here's your Central Pacific and closer to Hawaii. Really, nothing else going on there. Now, here is what the European ensemble models are showing. The EPS models, the European ensembles, and this is how many what percentage of those models are actually showing tropical depression wind speeds of 20 knots or greater. And you see, we actually have a big swath of them. And what you're actually seeing is just this line of thunderstorms that's kind of moving through. And the GFS model, the American model, wants to bring kind of some sort of tropical cyclone, potentially just east of Hawaii, and kind of track it, something like that. We'll show you that model in just a little bit, but overall, we're going to have a lot of tropical activity over parts of the Eastern Pacific and even into the Central Pacific, and that could potentially one or two of these thunderstorms or this cluster or these clusters of thunderstorms could potentially move away from this big band moving from east to west, and and those thunderstorms would then probably turn into a tropical storm. You have some fairly warm sea surface temperatures here, so that would definitely be favorable for development. And if we play this through, you actually have about a 60 to 70% chance in the highest locations to see tropical storm development. We have two potential storms. We have one that looks to potentially kind of move this way north into parts of Mexico, and then we also have one that the GFS is really eyeing up that kind of swerves out away from this line of thunderstorms and kind of re-strengthens. And it wouldn't be too strong, but it would definitely be one of your named storms if that were to happen. So here is your tropical storm force wind speed probabilities, and they are much lower. But you see, as you start to get to about the 23rd, Tuesday the 23rd, which would be next week by this point, so about 8 days out from now. And again, this could still change, but about 20 to 30% of the models are actually showing a tropical storm developing, and again, 60 to 70% were showing a tropical depression. So that's pretty high for this far out. Still something that's very uncertain and something that we don't have too high of confidence in. But that definitely something that we have to pay attention to here, and that would continue to move north and west from there. So here's your wind shear, and we do have some fairly unfavorable conditions in terms of your wind shear. That's just because we have this big line of very, very strong wind shear that's moving from west to east here, and that's actually bringing with it some very unfavorable conditions. As you get those very strong winds aloft, that can really tilt your system, and that can really make it a lot weaker than it originally was. And you see, we do have a little pocket of less wind shear down here, but that is definitely a very, very small pocket. And with these tropical storms, they tend to usually kind of move with the trade winds, and they would actually move kind of this way. So it is something. It's going to be going straight into the wind shear. So if we do anything to develop, it's not going to be too strong here because of these very unfavorable conditions. Now here is your European model and what it's showing actually in terms of its precipitation. So those darker greens, that's indicating where a thunderstorm is, and that's where an area of convection is located. You want to really see some of these kind of move north and away from these systems or from this line of thunderstorms so that it can actually develop, because right now a storm cannot develop while it's still in a line of thunderstorms. It has to really get away from that line of thunderstorms in order to develop. So you're gonna see the European model not bringing up too much, but it does. You do start to see this system right here. This is an area that would potentially be a tropical storm, and this is also the area that the GFS is also looking at with potentially a tropical storm or a tropical depression, and it's a very unorganized area of thunderstorms that potentially could move into Hawaii potentially, and that would be about a good 10 days out from now. So as we get closer to that, I'll definitely add more updates onto my YouTube channel. So make sure you are subscribed so that you do get those notifications. Now, here's the GFS model and what it's showing. This is the American model, and the GFS model wants to bring up a little area of convection right around here and just offshore of Mexico. Then it brings it westward. I'm not quite sure how likely this is. Most likely, it's not very likely. This is just one model, and the European model was much further west with this storm, but the GFS putting this a bit further east, and you do have a little area, very, very small area of a wrapped up low pressure system that is quite strong for a low pressure system that's small, and it does kind of spin around and then it kind of dies down. The GFS also, within the next 1 to 2 weeks, wants to spin up a couple more systems, and really the Eastern Pacific starts to get very, very active. You have 1, 2, 3 storms, even 4 storms here that the GFS wants to spin up, and out of those, probably only one of them will actually develop. But it's good to see that these most of the models actually are agreeing that we're probably going to have an uptick in tropical activity after we get out of this period where we're in a very, very unfavorable condition or unfavorable pattern for development. But definitely when this hurricane season starts to really get underway, which I think is most likely going to be anywhere between about August and September, maybe even lingering into October, that's when I think we're going to have a bunch of storms, and it's going to be pretty rapid fire with these storms, I do believe, because definitely it is going to usually August, September usually are the most active hurricane season months, and especially with the favorable pattern that we're going to see in the long range, I think it is definitely likely that we will see an uptick in these tropical storms within the next couple of days. Anyways, guys, that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.